I'll call this meeting to order. All right, before we get started, let's introduce everyone uh, on this meeting. I'm Sandy Brock. When I call your name, please confirm that you can hear me by verifying that you are present. I'll start with the commissioners. Travis,
Present.
Jonathan,
Present.
Patrick,
Present.
Emily.
Present.
Okay, that's just happens to be the order that was listed in the lead sheet. So, okay, as far as the staff goes, Leah
Present.
and Jan.
Present.
Thank you very much. Actually going to go through our expected speakers. If you are on, please unmute yourself and respond that you can hear us. First, starting with 6 Frankie Lane, Van, and I'm just going to have to say, if you could give me your last name, that would be great.
I'm Vito Colonna here for the applicant.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you for chiming in.
Yeah.
For 58 Follette Street, Jessica Barty. Not here yet. Also for 58 Follette is Jesse Marino.
Yeah, I'm here. Jessica will be on. I talked to her earlier.
Okay. And then is Chris Lucas on also?
I believe somebody from Chris's office will be on. I don't know if it's Chris though.
Okay. Not a problem. The key thing is that we have someone from each of our public hearings to respond.
Yep.
Okay. So now we get to read this. This open meeting of the Conservation Commission is being conducted remotely via Zoom pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order, as most recently extended on March 29th, 2023. Access information for the public has been provided on the town website. This meeting is being recorded. Please remember to mute your phone or computer when you are not speaking. If you are using a dial-in by telephone feature, you can mute yourself by pressing *6. As chair, I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. Please note that you will not have screen sharing privileges, but staff can display any visuals per your cue. After speakers conclude their remarks, I will invite each commissioner to provide any comments, questions, or motions. After the commissioners have spoken, I will allow public comment to be spoken by participants. Participants must use the raise hand feature by clicking the hand icon at the bottom right of the Zoom menu bar to indicate they would like to speak. If you are using a dial-in by telephone feature, please press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute when you are called upon. Participants who raise their hand will be recognized one at a time and will be promoted to speak. Public comments will be followed by commission and applicant responses. Finally, each vote taken will be conducted by roll call vote. As a reminder, the commission is concerned with state and town wetlands and stormwater regulations. Concerns outside this purview need to be addressed to the appropriate boards. For example, road conditions must be addressed with the select board, and traffic concerns must be addressed with the planning board. All right, seeing that 7:05. Leah, any action items that we could take care of ahead of time?
Say my usual, skip over 114 Merriam and 6 Magnolia Lane. They are both working in the background. They just still aren't ready. So,
Okay, so that
they-
just pretty much leaves meeting minutes, correct?
yeah,
They were actually a little bit longer this time than usual.
that means
Just-
you guys talked more.
That's a good one. I think just because of some of the 95 North and some of the findings and stuff, it just was a
Yeah.
little bit longer. So having talked about that, we can do the May 2nd meeting minutes. So if anyone has any comments, questions on the meeting minutes, please let me know. I'll go through real quick. If there are no comments or questions, then we'll go to a vote. So I'm doing this based on beautiful Zoom and where everyone is popping up. I see Emily is busy, so I'm going to skip to Patrick.
Oh, no comments.
Jonathan,
No comment.
Travis,
No comments.
and Emily.
No comments, thank you.
And I have no comments as usual. Nice job. Can I have a motion to accept the minutes of May 12th, 2023?
I'll move to approve the May 2nd, 2023 minutes.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Very good. Thank you. Roll call vote. Emily,
Approve.
Patrick,
Yes.
Jonathan.
Yeah.
Travis.
Yes.
I am also a yes. This is the first time I've been able to say this in a long time. Passes unanimously. All right, Leah, it seems like the other two are gonna bypass. Is there any other discussion items at this point?
We could probably start the Highfields conversation. I'm not sure how long Byron anticipates needing. He's in our attendees list.
Okay, so all right, so I will open that. So which one are we looking to? Is the Highfields?
Yes, so they want to talk about, so where we had left off with them
Yep.
was we denied a last, one of the last partial COCs they were seeking for what they're calling phase 1 of Highfields. We denied that last one because a lot of the wetland replication work was found to be still outstanding.
Right.
So he's back to talk about logistically how to go forward.
All right, I would say go ahead and promote him, and let's start that conversation, and we'll see how long that takes before our first public hearing.
Good evening. Can everyone see me all right?
We can hear you fine, so
Oh, okay. I'm not sure why my screen isn't showing up. I don't see the, I actually don't see the button to to show my screen. But really, I have two questions. They're kind of contingent on one another. The first question, and probably the most significant question, is we have to substitute for 4 replication areas that either weren't built or weren't completed as designed. I wanted to ask the board's opinion about whether we could substitute the areas in phase 1, since that's already built out and it would involve, abutters and working behind people's houses, if we could propose the replication areas entirely in phase 2.
so Leah, could you bring up a quick map or a plan just to kind of?
So that image actually relates to my second question.
Do
Which
you
we
just
can
want
wait.
GIS, Sandy? Or are you just
I think
looking-
GIS is, to me, it's just an overview, just to I want to just see where the, in a very general way, where the proposed, replication areas and where they're going to. I'm really looking to see if it's the same wetland system or not, and just to get a better overview, because I think that's kind of key to this question.
Okay, so it'll be McGill Drive, Jan.
So the proposed replication areas, there were 2 small ones behind 14, I think it's 12 and 14 McGill Drive, up on the Old Upton Road side. And yeah, right in that area behind those 2 houses.
Okay.
2 small replication areas. The next area is if you zoom out to McGill Road. I have the map up here, so I'm trying to kind of use it to direct myself here. Adjacent to 173 McGill Drive, that's near Silver Spruce. So you see there are 2 wetland areas that kind of bump up against McGill Drive. One was proposed on the north side and the other was proposed on the south side.
Okay,
The south side area was never built. The north side area, that's actually where the replication area was proposed as part of the golf course now. So there really isn't a good way to create that replication area in that location. I believe there was a meeting back in like 2007 or so about that issue. And it was decided, my understanding is it was decided that that area could be substituted with an area near the beginning of phase 2, where there's a large wet area.
So
So-
can I just cut in for 1 second?
sure.
Jan, can you turn the wetland layer on, because the green you're actually seeing now is the golf course, it's not.
Oh, thank you for that. Thank
Yeah.
you. Oh, gotcha. That's okay. I was wondering why they were all separate. Okay. That's really what I was looking for. Okay. And then if you move to phase 2, and
Yeah,
then just
phase
the
2 is
general
the-
area.
Yeah, that's the loop road. It's kind of almost hourglass shaped there.
Okay.
in the lower right corner of the screen, yeah. So that's phase 2.
Yep.
So we would like to relocate some of it to phase 2 if possible.
Okay. And is there also a replication area for phase 2?
There is a replication area. If you see where it shows a stream crossing McGill Drive, near the place where it splits with, I think it's Manor Hill Drive there. There is a replication area proposed in that location, and that's part of
Okay.
phase 2.
Okay. So yeah, and where kind of my questions are, obviously, this isn't meeting the plan, but the intent of it is I would have to look back, or we would have to look back to see what the ratio was for the overall replication area. So it's really making sure that we restore the wetlands so there's no net loss, but you typically do that at like a 2-to-1 because you never have complete success. I was more curious about how the wetland systems are tied together, because you really want to do it in the same wetland system. And what I mean by a wetland system is when I look at the wetland areas and they're all tied together through either streams or intermittent streams, then that's a wetland system to me. So that's kind of being tied together. So that was kind of my first questions. Let me go around the commission to get other people's questions, and see if anyone else has any other comments. And again, what we're talking about is for whatever series of reasons, the replication area for phase 1, which is now complete with actual individual homeowners, did not get completed per the plan. And the applicant is requesting, as just an overview of kind of an approach, is if that replication area for phase 1 is moved into phase 2. So that's kind of what we're talking about now. So Jonathan, any kind of comments or questions?
I'll lean on what I normally lean on, which is, has this happened in the past with the multi-phase project that Sandy or Leah, you've been involved in, where this is the norm, or is this something that's way outside the norm?
Yeah,
you
I'll
know.
let Leah add to this. I can remember a couple of times when replication areas were shifted after they get in construction for various reasons. Not on a project this size, but I have to say there hasn't been a lot of projects this size. I don't know if Leah, if you have any other kind of references. I'm thinking of one that was moved.
I actually can't think of any since I've been here, so why don't you speak to the one you remember?
It was relatively small. It was like 2 or 3 lots, fairly large lots, and based on I would almost say the speed of things were going and so forth, some of the replication areas got moved, but that was done in coordination with art and so forth. It ended up being a little bit better, but that was a much smaller scale. And I can't remember the absolute reason. A lot of it had to do with when the different lots were constructed. So it was kind of a sequencing type of thing, and it got left to the end, and then it got moved, and it in the end it was fine. It's a little bit not the same just because it was a much smaller general area, and the wetland system was pretty throughout the whole lots. It was, yeah, this is, and that was quite a few years ago, Leah. I'm not even sure if you were um, with the commission at that time, but it was, I just remember it because we went through a whole process where Art got involved, went out and looked at the alternate areas, and it ended up being that it would work fine, and they had to come back with new plans, and so it got done, but it was not on this size of
Okay.
project. So, but that's, relatively small impacts. So it was a relatively small change and so forth. But
Yeah.
any other questions, Jonathan?
So why wasn't the replication put in phase one?
I'm not sure the answer to that question. I know two of the replication areas were put in. But at least today they don't seem to have a hydrant connection with the wetlands that they are supposed to be connected to. And a lot of other plant life other than what was proposed there has taken over since this has been like, probably like 15 years. So two of the areas were built, but they're not really adequate for their purpose. Two other areas were not built. One has a pathway on it now. The other area is just like a virgin area that has not been disturbed.
I think this might be an example of why we now have our wetland consultant go out and check the areas of where wetland replications go, just because they can have a pretty high failure rate. That's one of the reasons, some of the conditions we write, and sometimes we ask Art to be involved in observing when they go in, just so they can be successful. Because I think the last thing we want to do is to avoid what happened where someone, quote unquote, tried to put it in a replication area and there's no wetland plants there. So it can't be used as a replica. It can't be counted for as a replication. So Patrick, any kind of questions on this? Again, we're still high level here. Yeah, you're on mute.
I think one question I have regarding timelines, if we shift this to the phase two, are we being asked to close out phase one first and sort of kick it down the road? Or is phase one going to be contingent on this being completed first?
I would think that we would not want to close out phase one until those replication areas are in, even if there are in phase two.
Right.
Otherwise, you lose any kind of leverage to get something done.
Yeah, that was my question, really. Other than that, and I guess you touched on this a little bit, is just I guess I worry a little bit about setting precedent for this, but realistically it happened and we have to do something here.
Travis, any questions?
So I'm gonna butter on this property, so I'm staying silent.
Okay, so you're recusing yourself?
Correct. Yep.
All right, thank you for that. Thank you for disclosing that. Emily, any questions on this?
Yeah, phase one was 15 years ago. Phase two is now. Are there additional phases where there could be an additional ask to push this further and further down the road?
Phase two is the final phase of this development. There are no plans to expand it, no plans to create another subdivision or anything like that. Basically, what our client is hoping to do, he wants, the impetus of the whole thing is he wants to have the phase one road accepted and then complete the housing in phase two, which is nearly complete, and then go for road acceptance for that one too.
And then, I'm still new, so I don't know this, but, can we set a timeline for when this work would need to be done? Or is it just in line with phase two and we have no control over that?
No, I would not associate this timeline with the phase two project.
Yep.
I think to me, the question is, can we put it in the area of phase two because there's active work going on there and the houses haven't been sold, so you don't have any issues with different owners. So that's kind of where I say, well, okay, that it makes it a little bit easier to get done. I would think whatever process that we come up with, like having to do new plans and having to submit it and so forth, wouldn't be tied to phase two. It would be tied to phase one getting released.
Okay.
So it would be on the applicant to like say, okay, yeah, we're getting permission to put it in phase two, but I can't wait till the end of phase two for it to be done. That's my opinion. Because we don't want to put ourselves into a corner where someone else comes back in 4 or 5 years and says, "Oh, geez, we didn't really do it right, and now we have nothing."
Yep.
So that would be my concern. So, Leah, any kind of comments on this discussion?
Yeah, I have a couple questions. One would be for Byron, which is aside from the motivation to move the replication into phase two in order to try to pursue road acceptance in phase one, that aside, is it making more like ecological sense to also put it in phase two at this point in time? Because areas in phase one are now golf course and, you know, like, are you kind of out of feasible spots in phase one at this point in time from just a wetland perspective is my first question.
Yeah, I would say that relative to the replication area on the north side of McGill Drive near Silver Spruce, we are out of room for that. It can't really be established in that area. This, in regard to the one on the south side, that is still possible. The area is owned by the golf course and it is, it's a forested area. It's not anyone's, occupation area or backyard.
Okay, so there are possible spots still in phase one, and I don't know, maybe you could like increase the square footage of the previous proposals to meet the overall square footage. I'm just throwing ideas out there. My other question is more for the commission, and I guess that would be, we're talking about like not wanting to let go of phase one in order to have some motivation for the work to be done. Some of the conditions in the original permits did reference a bond being put in place. We have no record of that actually existing now, unless it was like wrapped into something with planning. So I didn't know if you would entertain the idea at all of, and this is a lot of ifs, but if the replication work was moved into phase two and permitted properly, and then if they sought the partial COC on phase one again, we could put a bond in place to kind of hold to ensure it's done.
I mean, that's definitely an option. The only part of that I don't like is if it ends up having to be used, that's a lot of extra work for the town to actually carry out
Yep.
of getting that bond. I mean, that's definitely an option that gives the town definitely some assurances that if they're not done, there's a mechanism that can actually install them.
Right.
So
Just trying to think of all possible avenues here.
Yep.
And I will just say that the existing permits for Highfields are expired. So when we do figure out this new work, it's gonna need its own NOI.
Yeah.
We can like incorporate it in as whatever kind of change we call it, or revision to the original scope of work filing as well, but there is no active permit right now, so it will also need a new active permit.
This is a big enough change. I would think that we'd want a new NOI for just this. It also helps the applicant just to have the replication under something. It's just the fact that it's still tied to the project, but it allows them to go in, do the work, and close out that specific replication work, so it can clear them up on other things, and so they can, clear up the issues with phase one, indoor, get it done ahead of time, so when phase two comes around, they're not dealing with replication again. So. All right, seeing that it's almost 7:30, we do have a public hearing at 7:15, correct, Leah?
Yes.
So this is a discussion, so it's not a public hearing. So I'm going to suggest that we kind of put this on hold for a moment, and then let's go and actually hear the 7:15, because that is a public hearing at a set time. So, and then we'll get back to that discussion, so we can get our public hearings in on a timely manner, because I don't think this is going to be solved in 3 minutes. So, okay. Now, having said that, all right, I just need to get to the correct sheet. All right. So for the 7:15 RDA for 6 Frankie Lane, pursuant to the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and the Grafton Wetlands Protection Bylaw, the Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing to act upon a request for determination of applicability for the repair of a septic system at 6 Frankie Lane. Who's here to discuss that?
I'm Vito Colonna with Cornerstone Engineering.
You have the floor, sir.
Okay, do you mind bringing up the plan if you have it?
Staff is always prepared.
I figured they were. All right, so this is about a 0.8 acre lot, existing 3-bedroom house. There's wetlands to the rear, kind of the bottom right of the screen. Those are delineated by Goddard Associates. It kind of joins up with a larger wetland to the south that eventually makes its way down to Lake Ripple, eventually, probably about a half mile away or so. And the drainage system from Frankie Lane actually feeds that. There's a drain line that dumps out right at the beginning of that wetland area. So in the rear yard, they do have an existing septic system. It's about 40 feet from the edge of the wetland now. That's in failure. So it must be replaced. So we went out, did soil testing, found a suitable location with sand and gravel, no restrictions to groundwater, and we found a location that's outside the 100-foot buffer zone. So that leach field will be shifted. It's kind of shown up kind of upper left of the screen near the existing driveway. The only work we need to do in the buffer zone would just to be locate the new septic tank and pump chamber. Just because we have to work with the existing plumbing of the house, which comes out from under the slab, so we can't really relocate that plumbing. So we did show that tank and the pump in the rear yard, and those are the closest tank is 64 feet from the wetland, and then just a work area around there we held at 50 feet from the wetland. It's all lawn back there, so there's no, or it's all disturbed back there, so no new tree clearing. No new expansion of anything in the back, just access and then get us to the tank and pump back there. And then we also have to backfill the old tank out there, which it's an odd situation. That existing tank is partially underneath the foundation slab. So we're going to fill it with flowable fill and route the pipe through that. So we don't actually have to excavate underneath the slab to get rid of that. I think that's all I had on that. Just hand it back over.
All right, thank you. Leah, your comments and what you see on this one?
So I don't have any comments. I just have a couple possible special conditions.
Okay, I will go around a roll call with the commissioners, just see if they have any questions. Jonathan,
No questions.
Patrick,
Nope. No questions.
Travis
No questions.
and Emily.
No questions.
Okay. Yeah, as far as that's kind of a wacky situation with the existing septic tank, but that is the Board of Health's issue. So we're not going to have any comments on that. The existing sanitary leaching field, what is are you just going to leave it in place, or is Board of Health going to
Yeah,
do anything?
no, it just gets left in place.
Okay. Just want to confirm that. Was the previous system on a pump, or was it just gravity?
It was gravity. Yep.
Okay. So you're just adding a pump to get it up. Okay.
Yep.
I don't really have any questions, fairly straightforward replacement. So this is a request for determination. Just because we have a new member, I'm just going to go through the process of what happens with a request for determination of applicability. So bottom line is that there's we will have a vote once we kind of go through any type of potential conditions. You'll either have a negative finding or a positive finding. What's a little bit different about this is a negative finding is, I think, what Vito is looking for, because that basically means we're done with the permitting. That means you do not have to go to a notice of intent. If you have a positive finding, then we would be ruling to say there's some other impacts that we feel is warranted that they have to do a full notice of intent. I mean, this is in a lawn area. It's pretty, the septic system failed, so it'll be just replaced in that lawn area. And then as far as, the site plan goes, it shows erosion control. One of the conditions that Lee is recommending is that we include a condition in the negative finding that the erosion control must be removed once the project is completed. Pretty straightforward. The other one has to do with, so these all precast systems. Is there anything that needs to have concrete placed, or is there any hold down pads or anything else?
No, nothing. Just the only thing would be mortar around the pipe joints, but that's just a
Yeah.
bucket. Yep.
We're just looking for, we've had issues in the past
Yep.
with concrete washout. And so if there was going to be any kind of, concrete truck coming to do something like a hold down pad or something,
Yep.
something else, then that might be it. Does that kind of answer your questions, Leah?
Yep.
Okay, so quick round. If you have any other comments or you think any other conditions, please let me know. Otherwise, we'll do a motion on this. One last thing is that I will open this up to the public. So if anyone is here on this meeting that wants to speak to 6 Frankie Lane, please raise your hand. While we go through a kind of roll call with the rest of the commission, we'll wait to see if we have any public comments. So any other comments or any other special conditions? Jonathan,
Nope.
Patrick,
No.
Emily,
No.
Travis.
Nope.
I am fine with the one that Leah proposed, which is we move the erosion control at the end. Having said that, has there been anyone who has raised their hands from the public?
Nothing from the public.
All right, thank you very much, Jan. So do I have a motion to issue a negative determination for 6 Frankie Lane?
I'll move to issue a negative determination at 6 Frankie Lane with the special conditions as described.
All right, do I have a second?
Second.
So I have a motion and a second. We'll do a roll call vote. Jonathan,
Yes.
Patrick,
Yes.
Emily,
Yes.
Travis.
Yes.
I am a yes, passes unanimously. So,
Well, thank you very much.
all right, good luck.
All right. Have a good night.
You too. All right. Leah, next one up is 58 Follett.
Yep.
Okay, let me get back to the lead sheet. All right. So this is one for 58 Follett. Pursuant to the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act, the Grafton Stormwater Management Bylaw, and the Grafton Wetlands Protection Bylaw, Conservation Commission will reopen a public hearing to discuss the special conditions related to the construction of a cell tower and driveway at 58 Follett. And I think there's a few people here, but whoever's going to speak for this project, go ahead. You've got the floor.
Great. I'll start off. Thank you, Chair Brock. Great to see everyone tonight. Thank you for having us. I'm Jess Barty with Robinson and Cole on behalf of the applicant, Cellco Partnership, doing business as Verizon Wireless. And here with me tonight is our civil engineer, Jesse Moreno from ProTerra Design, and Tom Liddy from Lucas Environmental, who's our wetlands consultant. And I think Tom is he's here, but not from, I'm wondering if you can promote him to panelist. He didn't get the link. He's filling in for one of his colleagues tonight.
Sure. Is that probably under desktop 21?
I think I saw Tom, I think I saw Tom Liddy TL. Do you see that one?
No,
Yeah,
we,
he's raising his hand now. I see it on my attendees list.
I can see it too.
that's odd. I don't see it.
You have to click under attendees as opposed to panelists, I believe.
Right.
Yeah, he's the second one down in my attendee list. Looks like a red square TL.
Maybe you have, if you click the view button at the top right, do you have the setting checked that hides people who don't have video? Could that be it?
It's not checked. Let's see. Because it should be coming up in the attendees list regardless. It's
Yeah.
very odd.
Can you see a hand up at all?
No, I don't see any hands up.
Can you,
All I see under attendees is Byron and desktop 21.
Oh,
Are you-
there's some
Are you
other.
able to make me a co-host and maybe I can do it?
All right. You should be co-host.
All right, I'm hitting promote to panelist just as a warning. It's probably gonna make you drop off and then come back on.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Zoom
Okay.
is very weird.
I know, right? Thank you so much. Great. So we're here tonight, like I said, on behalf of the applicant. So we're here with the hope of having a substantive discussion with the commission about the special conditions that were read by Chair Brock back on March 21st, when the commission had approved the project that was proposed and approved the waiver request we had asked for from the 25 no disturb zone. So now that we've had some time to digest the conditions after hearing them on the 21st, we understand the spirit of the conditions and but from our perspective, from the applicant's perspective, some of the conditions as drafted could make it impossible or, almost impossible for the applicant to comply with. So with that said, we're hoping that, we can reach a solution that results in some workable conditions that can be attached to the order in a manner that, promotes and protects the purpose of the bylaw and the act, but also, doesn't cause the project to, essentially be prohibited or cause us to have to subsequently, challenge the order in another forum. So I think with that, we're, looking forward to, a discussion tonight with the commission on these conditions. And
Sandy, you're muted.
Sorry, too many mouses. So Tom Liddy's back. Leah, can you bring up the order so we can see the conditions and we can kind of go through them in a methodical way?
So I last time I drafted our conditions, I took the special conditions we discussed that evening and put them in the document with our standard conditions. And then from there, I have marked this up with the applicant's proposed changes. So I
Okay.
don't know if you want to just hit the proposed changes first or go through all, or how you want to do it.
So this is just track changes. So they're striking 9 and 10, just so that I'm on the same page. They're striking 9 and 10, partially striking 11, renumbering it, striking 12, or used to be 14, striking.
Yeah, and
Okay.
I can speak to each one. You can kind of ignore the numbering because Word just starts to renumber them on you
Yep.
when you delete things, but I can walk you through. I just didn't know if you wanted to go one by one on just the things that have changes, or if you wanted to walk through the whole thing.
And that would be to the applicant.
Leah, are there new, so I haven't seen these conditions yet. Is there anything new in here?
So the way that this commission does conditions is we have a set that is just called our standard conditions that go in all of our orders. And then the ones that we discuss and specifically vote on in each hearing are anything considered special or above and beyond those. So what I've drafted since is taking the standard and then plugging in the special that were voted on that night. And then I have it marked up from your email.
Are the standard ones the ones, if you, can you scroll up for a sec? Are those the ones in the general?
They're all throughout the document.
Oh, okay.
So maybe it would be beneficial to go through all.
I think that would probably be helpful, just so we don't run into, the situation that we were in March. And then if there's anything that seems like we should, speak internally, then, I might seek to continue this discussion to another date. But yeah, I guess
Okay.
for now, let's start. And Jesse and Tom can kind of jump in if they see any issues.
Okay, so Sandy, question for you. Do you want me to just talk about one, give them a chance, like if they're okay with it or have comments, and then we handle the comments one by one?
Yeah, so
Or-
let's just kind of go through them first, because there are several of them I think there'll be no issues at all with, because some of them are very generic about following the plans. If the plans change, those
Yeah.
type of conditions. So those
right.
I don't. So let's get rid of all the ones that are fairly straightforward. I mean, they're the typical ones we do, which we don't typically run into any problems with. Let's get through all of them so that if so we can have majority of them say, yep, that's not a
Okay.
problem. So
Then-
once you go through and general discuss it, and go from there.
Okay, so anybody stop me if you need me to stop and answer any questions, but we have our finding about that the project was eligible to be a limited project, but that status wasn't sought by the applicant because it met the standards. We have the waiver that we issued for work within the 25-foot no disturb. We have references to the plans, the sequencing documents, etc. Number 2 under general conditions is if you need to change things, you'll bring the changes to us and we'll figure out which avenue to proceed with the changes under. Number 3, the commission reserves the right to require additional conditions if they need to. 4 is that these permits will become part of the construction documents and specs so that all the contractors and everyone is aware of them. 5 is that the order and the approved plans will be on site at all times. 6 is work will be halted on site if it's in non-compliance. Then we get into the section of prior to commencement of work, everything will be recorded at the registry. The sign will go up with the file numbers. for now, I'm gonna skip over the ones that we want to discuss in more detail, so.
Great.
If we hop down to, used to be 12, now it's 10, is for the bond for erosion control, site stabilization, wetland replication, and stormwater management. You guys will give us an estimate that will get checked by our peer reviewer. When we all agree on it, then you guys will put the bond in place. Next is we want a copy of the SWIP. We just keep that on record for our files. We don't make any kind of ruling on it. It's just for record's sake. If we skip down to previously 15, but potentially now 13, erosion control will go up where shown on the plans. 14 is for the construction entrance at the entrance to the site. The next one is to have a staging area outside of wetland resource areas and buffer zones. Talks about everything that needs to go in that staging area, like trucks, dumpsters, etc. After that, we have the funds we're asking for peer review inspections during construction of the wetland replication work and the stormwater infrastructure installation work. And then we get down to during construction, equipment shall not go beyond the erosion control barriers. Erosion control will be maintained. You'll have a supply of the materials for erosion control on site in case you need to replace anything. Loaming and seeding will happen within 7 days of final grading. Unless it needs to be inactive for over 2 weeks, then it will be stabilized with seed mix or another way. We also have wording in there about if it's in the winter and everything's frozen, how to handle that. No stockpiling within the buffer zone. Make sure the stockpiles are stabilized, surrounded by erosion control. We'll skip over the replication for a minute. No perchlorate blasting agents shall be used on the site.
That's Leah, that's also a DEP one too, right?
The blasting one?
Yeah, I've seen that before on,
Yes.
okay. Sorry, keep going.
No, it's fine. Then any catch basins in the road will be protected, and any sediment deposited in the whatever manner you choose to protect them with will be cleaned out periodically. Any dirt that gets in the road will be swept up. A concrete washout on site for any rinsing of trucks and things of that nature. If you need to de-water, you guys did give us a dewatering detail, so I have a reference to if you need to de-water, you'll follow that detail. Keep an eye on the water coming out of that operation. Erosion control will stay in place until everything's stabilized, but it will come out before you get a COC. 29 details how to request a COC when you're done. Then we get into our ongoing conditions, which sets up the no disturb buffer zone. Prohibits dumping in that no disturb. Herbicides and pesticides are prohibited in the buffer zone. We do allow fertilizer if you show a soil analysis that proves it's needed. We also prohibit sodium-based de-icing products in the buffer zone. The stormwater management facilities will be maintained per the O&M plan that was supplied. Snow will not be pushed into the buffer zone or any of the stormwater infrastructure, and any sand and litter left behind after the snow melt will be cleaned up so it doesn't clog up the stormwater system. And then any future disturbance proposed on the site, which goes beyond that permitted in these approved plans, will be submitted to the commission for review and approval. Main reason being that this stormwater system was designed for a certain amount of stormwater, so anything that goes beyond that, we would want to recheck those calculations. And that's it for the ones that we were not anticipating taking through this evening, but happy to clarify anything.
I just had two minor comments on those. Those are all pretty good. I just wanted to point out a couple of things. One, where you call out the plans, the planning board at their last meeting, or second to last meeting, the applicant and planning board agreed on a different height tower. And that changed 2 plans in the plan set. But they are outside of jurisdiction, but I just wanted to make you guys aware of that. I don't think it's not going to affect any work that's shown, but they had us just change the height of the tower. They actually lowered the height of the tower. There were 2 sheets in the plan set, but it doesn't affect any work within jurisdiction or anything. I don't know if that needs to be clarified at all, or.
So we will need a copy of those, first of all. Second of all, I do think that I could just update the revision date on here because this hasn't gone out the door yet. I mean, we're looking
That's
to
fine.
finalize
We
it
can
now.
certainly do that. Like I said, it was up by it just changed the tower height. That's really all it did. So,
Okay,
and that wasn't where the tower isn't in jurisdiction. We can certainly send you that. It's
Okay.
2 sheets.
yeah, just for
Um,
consistency,
sure.
send it over and I can change that date.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
The second thing was really minor. There was a comment on the laydown area. And I just wanted it said it needed to be outside the buffer. There is a laydown area that was approved and Ecotech actually brought this up when they reviewed, that is at the front end of the site. It's on the replication plan that you guys have. Just wanted to clarify that that's on the plan already.
Okay.
In
in
what
that-
kind of, excuse me, I'm sorry, who's
Yeah.
talking now? I just want to make it sure for the recording, if you say your
This-
name.
This is Jesse Marino with Portera Design Group.
Thank you. And when you say a laydown area, what is going to be in that laydown area? Because there's a long
So-
list in the conditions, which I'm sure some of those is not going to be there.
Right. Well, I was just pointing out that one of the comments Ecotech has was to create or move the laydown area that we originally showed in the stockpile area to the very front of the project outside the 25-foot buffer, which is what we did. But obviously that's inside the 100, but outside the 25, but there is no other place to put it. So right when you come onto the property on the left-hand side, it's shown on D5, there is a laydown area. And the reason it was shown there is because that area had to be trimmed anyway for sight distance. So that's just pointing that out.
Right.
Again, I don't think it affects anything that you guys have reviewed or looked at, but it looked like you had pretty strict guidelines that everything had to be out of the 100, and yet there is some laydown shown there.
I
Okay.
think I just missed that when I was
Yep,
wording
And that's
this
fine. We're not
condition.
intending to put fuel storage or anything like that, but again, this would be like maybe mats when we do the crossing, that kind of stuff. So we can get it off the road and be able to install it. But again, I
That's
don't think
on-
it's a big deal, just pointing it out.
It sounds more like an active construction area as opposed to a laydown area.
Well, it's on the plan, it's called out as a 20 by like 50 construction laydown area.
Okay.
So, and the idea there was to facilitate the crossing,
Gotcha.
the equipment that was needed for that. Now, I think we're fine with, obviously, we don't want to put any fuel in there. We don't want to have, porta potties or anything like that. I just was trying to clarify that we did show something, and that was at the request of Ecotech there to facilitate the work there.
Yeah, understood. I mean, that's really just reflecting on what's on the plan already.
Right, correct, yes.
So would you guys be okay with if I change the wording to located outside of all wetland resource areas and no disturb buffer zones? Would the commission be happy with that, or do I need to get more particular?
I would just say to keep it even simpler than that, is leave what's there. And then at the end, except for the area identified on
Okay,
the plan, and that would be used for lay down to facilitate the crossing. instead of changing all of it, is just to give, because it is on the plans, is just to do it except for this one area.
Yeah, you could
shown
just
on the
say
plan.
accept as noted on the plan or
Yep.
something like that. Yep,
Yep.
perfect.
Got it.
All right, so before we kind of go on to kind of the point by point, I just quickly want to go around the commissioners and just to make sure that no one has any kind of comments on what we've discussed so far. Jonathan?
My only question is, I've been on the commission for 3 years and I've never been part of one of these where we have to come back and revisit. So what's the reasoning for coming back and revisiting? Is it errors, changes, past us, other things? I just didn't know what was driving this review and adjustment, if it was from the applicant internally, what this was.
Good question. So this is being driven by the applicant based on certain conditions where they feel that they can't actually meet that condition. So instead of trying to, avoid it and whatever, they want to address it so they can meet the conditions. So the ones that we just went through were the ones that were outside of the ones they had comments on. So we wanted to just make sure there was no issues with that. Then the ones that we go through next will be the ones that they felt they could not meet based on how they were written. So this is a little bit unusual, which is why this is a public hearing. So,
Okay.
yeah, no, it's a good question because this is not common for us to do this.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Patrick, anything?
Nope.
Emily?
No,
Travis?
This one was before I started,
Okay.
so I think I'm recusing myself again.
No, you don't really have to because this is a separate request. Leah, am I right in that this is because they're coming back in front of us? It's not like,
Great question. Initially, our 3 eligible voters at the time would have been Sandy, Jonathan, and Patrick. However, you're correct that it is a new legal ad, a new abutter notification, and like a reopening for a particular purpose. So if you feel that resets it for everybody, then we actually now have 5 eligible voting members.
I don't think in this particular case, because this is some of the discussions, like from my perspective, discussing these conditions, we're not taking any new testimony. We're not reopening that original one. We're simply talking about the conditions. So
You
Okay.
feel that it opens it up to everybody?
I think it does, but I'll leave it to both Emily and Travis that if they don't feel comfortable, then they can themselves recuse. I don't see in this particular, based on the process that has been going on and based on the new, it's not like we're voting on the project and we're not taking any kind of testimony. All we're doing is responding to an applicant who is questioning how they meet certain conditions, and they've requested. Same thing as to me is a minor change. That if we had a change on a project that came in before either Emily or Travis or before Patrick or Jonathan, we all can vote on it. It just, as long as it's not a continuation and we're voting on it. So that's my take on
Okay.
it, but I am certainly not an attorney, but that's kind of my take on it. So
All right.
good question though.
Yeah, I don't have any questions.
May I add something to this discussion about the voting members?
Yes.
This is Jess Barty. So I guess I'm a little reluctant to add Emily and Travis only because they were not part of all of the substantive discussions on this project to date. And I know that this is technically, we did reopen the hearing, but from more of a, practical standpoint, I feel like this is a continuation because we're, continuing on the commission's deliberations really about, the conditions that were imposed, and the order was only approved by 3 commissioners that,
Right.
so I guess I'm wondering, I guess I kind of have a follow-up question. Is the commission's gonna issue, they're gonna do a new motion tonight, a new motion and vote tonight? I mean, assuming we get to the conclusion of our
That's
discussion.
correct. Yeah, in the way I'm looking at it. And again, I appreciate you saying that because, obviously we want to be respectful of the process. I guess I'm looking at this as the wording, the intent of these conditions are not going to be changed. What's coming about is just the fact that your perception that there's some challenges to meet the wording of how we did it, but we still want to have the intent of each one of the conditions. But I mean, I don't have a problem, and if you're requesting, and certainly we'll put it in the minutes that that you requested that only the 3 previous commissioners who voted on this to be the voting members moving forward. I mean, just to make it a little bit cleaner. I mean, I don't mind, asking both Emily and Travis if they could abstain from voting for this particular one, if it makes it a little bit smoother. I don't think it's going to change anything. I just think it's, maybe it makes it cleaner. What we're trying to do here is avoid any kind of appeals. So,
Right. Yeah.
so yeah, I mean, at this point where we're not trying to change intent, we're just changing some of the specific wordings and catching up on a few things. I don't want to make this a bigger deal than it needs to be. So.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, yes, I would feel more comfortable just to stick with the 3 voting members.
Yeah. And that's probably because you are an attorney and I'm not. So.
I think to your point, I think, it'll be cleaner this way. And like we said, avoid any issues.
Right. I
Thank you.
Yeah, that's not a problem. All right. So it seems like, correct me if I'm wrong, but kind of the other conditions that we just went through, other than those 2 minor comments, those are all seems fairly straightforward. So now we get it to just go back to the ones that you were having some issues with. Okay. So let's go. Number 9 is the first one.
Could be, yeah.
Okay. And go ahead, Leah, if you can just explain what this was for,
Yeah,
and then we can go to the applicant.
okay, just to double check, Jan, can you just scroll up for 1 second? I think it's the first one though. Yeah, okay.
Mhm.
All right, so 9 and 10 go together. They're the 2 references that we had to the chapter 61 process, because this property is chapter land. So the 9 was a reference to that they'll file the NOI under chapter 61, which notifies all of the required parties of the proposed change in use. And 10 was that they'll complete that process, pay any rollback taxes that are applicable. So it was just, we were just referencing another department's process. They asked that they be deleted. So
Okay.
I'll let you guys talk through that one.
Okay, so what I would just say here is the one thing that, as far as the intent of this is, this is almost more of a making sure that all permits have been issued and are complied with before any work commences. I know we have on a lot of other projects just simply put, all permits shall be obtained prior to the work commencing. So I would go to the applicant. Is the issue the fact that this is specific to chapter 61, or a reference to another permit?
Thank you. Jess Barty here. Our main issue with 9 and 10 was just that the specific reference to the chapter 61 land. We feel that both of these are, outside of, the scope of authority and, the conditions that should be imposed in an order of conditions here. So we would like to see these deleted. If the commission feels more comfortable with, the wording that Chair Brock just mentioned about, more of a generic condition about having, obtaining all, necessary permits prior to commencement of work. I don't particularly see an issue with something more generic like that. If that, still captures the spirit of what the commission's looking for, but also kind of removes the specificity here about the chapter 61 land.
So let me go around, and I mean, I know that from my perspective, sometimes when there's specific permits, we note it in the conditions simply so that it's a reminder to us and also to the applicant that, this is one of the things that has come up. I don't have a problem with doing a more generic one. Let me go quickly around the commissions, and I'll just start with Patrick.
I guess I don't think I see any issue with going with the more vague wording.
Yeah. Jonathan?
Same as what Patrick just mentioned. I don't think, as long as it's, if it's a little more vague, I don't have an issue with that.
Yeah. And I'm actually going to skip Emily and Travis at this point, so they're not part of this, kind of discussion here. So back to Leah. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's just a more generic. Okay.
Yep.
And so we basically replace 9 and 10 with a more, prior to commencement of work, all applicable applications shall be obtained. I'm just reading through these two. Yeah, and you can't get, that should cover it.
Okay.
Do you have any, Jessica, do you have any issues with that type of wording?
No, I prefer the, the more generic condition here. So it'd be prior to commencement of work, the applicant shall obtain
All applicable
all applicable permits. Approvals.
for this project. I
Okay,
think maybe for this project is specific to this project. And if
that sounds
that's,
good.
if
Mhm.
that's a planning, then that's fine. We know that. That's cool. If it's chapter 61, then it's, we're not identifying any single one.
I'll
Okay.
just double check with Jesse and Tom that they don't have any issues with that, but
Yeah.
I don't see an issue with that from my perspective. That sounds good.
And I know that we try to be very focused on what our scope is, hence is why we ask for a SWIP, but we're not going to review it. It's not our jurisdiction, but it's very good for us to have it as a reference. So,
Great.
Yeah, I don't know. This is Jesse. I don't have a problem with that either. That's providing the SWIP is fine and for review. And a more kind of generic wording of that. Just make sure that says something like applicable instead of the word all, because all can mean a lot of things. So
yeah, which is why I wanted to associate it with this project and not just,
right,
I don't know, like
correct.
putting a
Sounds
sign
good.
up that has nothing to do with what we're doing. Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Next
Yeah.
up, Leah.
Can I just read out what I am going to write?
I think
That would be
that's,
great.
that would be perfect.
Prior to commencement of work, the applicant shall obtain all other applicable permits for this project.
Perfect.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is 10 getting completely deleted, or is there a part tied into taxes or something like that? Or is that only with the chapter 61?
That's very specific to chapter 61.
Okay.
So, and that just
So
has to
that's
do,
getting struck
yeah.
through complete.
Yeah, so if they've cleared the whole notice of intent for chapter 61, then they've gone through that process. But next up, Leah.
So formerly number 11, we had prior to commencement of work, they'll put a CR on the rest of the parcel outside of the cell tower and access drive. They're proposing it not falling in the prior to commencement of work section and instead being after they receive a building permit. In addition, they would like the language to read that a CR will be conveyed to the town, Grafton Land Trust, or other entity we had acceptable to the town they're suggesting, or other entity eligible to accept a CR.
So I will just ask the question is why after a building permit and what is included in the building permit as far as approval of work?
So I think from our perspective here, we're looking, we're gonna we actually withdrew our application with the planning board, and we, intend to refile it later this summer. So I think, before we go through the process of getting, conveying a conservation restriction, we'd like to actually have, our permits in line. And by permits, I mean, have our order of conditions, have the special permit site plan approval, and then go to seek a building permit. So we know that this project is actually moving forward before we actually go through the process of the conveyance of the conservation restriction. That's really just from a a timing perspective. That was really our, the kind of the genesis of that edit or
Okay.
comment.
I don't see it as a big change, Leah. Do you see that as a significant change?
No.
Okay. And then as far as eligible to accept a CR, I mean, that's fine. I mean, Jonathan, any kind of questions on these changes?
Yes, shouldn't it read after a building permit has been issued but prior to commencement of work? Or if you just say after a building permit has been issued, that is from that point forever, right? Or until the end of the project? So are we defining when that conservation restriction needs to take place? Because after a building permit has, I mean, if we're going to get nitty gritty with the wording of all of these, that is how I would read that is any time after that is after. So hypothetically, if the project took 10 years, that that restriction might not be in place until 10 years out. Correct?
I think it's a great point. I don't know if the applicant has a response to that.
I guess the response I'd have to that is that given I don't know exactly how long it would take for a conveyance of the conservation restriction, and that process to, how long that process would take. So if we get a building permit issued to us, after we obtain our, special permit, if we obtain our special permit and site plan approval, that building permit, I believe would only be valid for 6 months. So that could put us in kind of an uncomfortable position if it took, if we added the prior to commencement of work, that could put us in a position of having to renew, ask for an extension on the building permit or otherwise have the building permit lapse. So, that I would have a little bit of pushback on that, just like from a logistics perspective and, timing.
But I would also agree with Jonathan that by just taking out those words, we're taking out any leverage that we have, meaning you're doing open and ended. I mean, a lot of times you do a CO. This isn't going to be, you're not going to have a CO on a cell tower.
Right. Yep.
Usually you can tie it into a certificate of occupancy because that's another leverage point. I don't know, to Jonathan's point here is we're taking it away, but again, we want something here that moves that CR along, and we have to have at some point, prior to the cell tower becoming functional or something that says that we have a line in the sand that says, yeah, we really need to have this CR done so that there's a reason why the applicant is actually going to do it. That's, I guess, I think is a very good point that Jonathan just made.
This is Jesse. I totally see your guys' point, but
Yeah.
also having done some of these CRs, they can take months to do.
We're involved in
You know what I
several
mean?
of them.
Like you have to, there's a lot of formality to it. There's Secretary of the Commonwealth gets involved
Yep.
a lot of times. So it could take, like to Jessica's point, it could take 6 months to get that done, right? Is there a
In what
time?
what we're afraid of, it's going to take 6 years, and that also happens. And then there's no incentive once everyone's gone away. I
Do
mean,
you
that to
have
me.
the, do you have the certificate of compliance though? That would hold them to that?
Unfortunately,
be
many people, unfortunately, we're chasing people all the time for a certificate of compliance. That does not give us any, so the certificate of compliance is only gives us leverage when someone's selling something. And it's a title search. So if you're not transferring the land, we have very little, I mean, we're not going to, the only alternatives is taking people to court. That doesn't happen over a COC. We routinely send out letters to get people to have COC. So that's why it's typically tied to like a CO, because you can't move in until you finish this. And that gives everyone the incentive to get it done. So our as a volunteer board, we get stuck in these circular references where there's no incentive for the applicant to do anything. And so that's why we want to put these type of conditions in. And it's not the commission saying that you're not going to do this. It's not the realization that it does take time, but we need something in the conditions to make sure it happens. Something that's within our control, that's reasonable. So
Is there a way we could maybe include, so after a building permit has been issued, leave this as edited here and then say, within a certain period of time after the building permit has been issued, that the applicant provides, some sort, some evidence that it's in the process of, the conservation restriction.
So those are words on a paper and a condition. There is no actionable items associated with that. So that's why the CO is so powerful. You can't move in until you do it, right? And on a cell tower, to be quite honest, I don't know on the building permit side if there's a point where the building inspector says, yeah, you can switch it on. I've never
I
been
mean, there is a
involved.
construction control process. You do have to close out the permit.
Yep.
Could we
It's, yeah, maybe that's a milestone that could be.
I think that's exactly what we're looking for, because then it's on everyone's radar and it would slow you down if that's not done. And then again, once everything's in motion and then that's a separate conversation 6 months down the road. But again, it's that ability to get everyone to kind of row in the same direction. So if you could just kind of rephrase what that was as far as the closeout of the building permit. And my guess is that you cannot have it operational till that happens.
I mean, that's the way it's supposed to work. Yes. I mean, you could check with the local building inspector, but numerous times a year I'm asked to, provide like I'm sure you're aware, like you'd have a initial construction control affidavit.
Yep.
And you need to do a final that's given to the building inspector along with, all the break tests and different special inspections before they issue or close out the permit.
Okay.
That's how it's done in the majority of towns. I don't know your particular town, but I would imagine it's the same.
Yeah, knowing our building inspector, our building commissioner, I'm sure that process is in place. So Leah, so do you get what we're saying is to say after building permit has been issued, but prior to permit closeout?
Yeah,
Okay.
yep.
Should-
And then
should it, sorry to interrupt, but should it, I'm just, I'm in the construction realm, so we deal with like temporary certificate of occupancy and certificate of occupancy. So would this type of building have a temporary certificate of occupancy, which might make the cell tower able to be used? Or is that a different permitting or a different structure than what's typical? You know, you get a C of O, you can move into the building. You get a C of O, you can turn the tower on, but the permit's not officially closed out until typically it's punched out and complete, correct? So what I think Sandy was getting at earlier was if there is a temporary certificate of occupancy or the cell tower land use, whatever this is equivalent, that's probably what we're after, not like the permit's punched out when the assistant building inspector drives around and says, oh, you're done, you know. I feel like there's an interim step in there, right?
I think one thing that we're dealing with right here is I think we have a little bit of an unknown, which is we're not sure because it's not our purview is that process Grafton building inspector does, and we can
Sure.
check with you know, that department to say what is your process, and then we can fill in that key part to give it you know, more date certain or an actionable item for that to actually happen. So that would require us to check with the building inspector just so we get the wording right and everyone's on the same page. So
Because that would keep their hypothetical feet to the fire to keep them pursuing
keep it
this
going.
as
Yeah.
going, so we keep getting movement here. So again, I get what you're saying, Sandy, which is if they get something and they turn the cell tower on and then they just let these things, I mean, we're dealing with other things that have trailed for
yes.
years. So
Yep.
we just
Yeah,
don't want that straight.
Yeah, we get into a very difficult when it's a third or fourth owner and we still don't have something. And when do you make someone pay up for sins of someone else? And that's,
Right.
you know, that's what we're trying to avoid. So,
I mean, I
so
think it's good you could check with the building inspector. What I've seen occur most often because there's special inspections required of this type of construction that
Yep.
Some building authorities will issue a certificate of occupancy because that is their format for closing the permit.
for the
but
mechanism.
Yeah, their mechanism, but I totally understand what you're saying, Jonathan. Each town's a little bit different there. There is generally I mean, everyone that I've done, there's been a closeout process. They may not call it a certificate of occupancy because it's an unoccupied structure. There is no occupancy, but with that being said, I cannot think of once where we had a temp because it's not like, you know, you're allowing people to move in and they got to, you know, fix the back deck or something or some kind of a issue. It's usually a go, no go kind of a scenario.
Yeah.
But I think if you know, I would say that if Leah talks to the building inspector, or your commissioner, that they have a process where you could tie it to that closeout, that end process, and it be acceptable.
Yeah, I think that's probably pretty fair. So Leah, do you have any issues talking to building department or Bob about that?
I can definitely do that. Just to clarify, you guys are okay with the latter part of this change about the entity. It's just the beginning that you want to
Correct.
clarify.
Yeah, I
Okay.
am. I don't have any issues. Eligible to acceptable a CR. I mean, I
Okay.
don't have a problem with that.
Got it.
Yeah, the state actually has a whole MGL on what are acceptable entities. There's all sorts of very
Yeah,
restrictions. So
yeah, which is why we have the Grafton Land Trust in, because that's who we partner mostly with.
right.
So that's and a lot of towns have those type of entities to actually so this can happen. So okay. So so let's keep going and we'll come back to the process of this one here just because I think we're close to wrapping this up. So the next one, Leah.
So previously number 14 is the vernal pool investigation we would like to have happen near the area that is suspected that it could be a vernal pool. I had it in the prior to commencement of work section. They're requesting that it come out of that section and instead be worded as after the first spring season of the start of work.
So basically, the way I'm reading this is that they'd like to be able to start work, but the first season that they can do an investigation, that's when they have to do it.
Yeah, I think it comes down to is like, for example, say we start in November or October. If that's when we get all our permits, that would be able to start, really, that would push it till the following, whatever, May or something, because you wouldn't be able to go and certify the pool because really needs to be, March, April, or March,
Yep.
or,
It's dependent upon
that's-
the temperature. Yep.
and,
So,
just if it works out and it can be done first, great. But I think that's the only reason. If for some reason you started a late summer, you couldn't, basically. You can only start in the spring, the way this is worded, if you were gonna look at it, very strict.
so Leah,
So-
any kind of reaction to that?
Yeah, I would propose changing their proposal of after the first spring season. I would suggest it say during the first spring season. After, I would put the after later, during the first spring season after the start of work, because
Yep.
I want to be able to capture if they start in the spring, we're not bumping it to the next spring, is
Yeah.
kind of the way I read it now. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, you're trying to be more specific. And to the example, if someone starts it in the fall, you want to make sure that it's that first spring after the start of the work,
Right.
as opposed to after the first spring. So if you start, yeah, that's just wording of this. I would go to the applicant to see if they understand what Leah's point is there. I think we're saying the same thing. It's just the wording in active versus passive voice.
Yeah, I think it gets us to the same place, the way Leah suggested it, right? Because to Jesse's point, if we're starting in November, the first spring is still the spring right after. But you're
Right.
saying you would have the certification like during that first spring,
Right.
once the work is commenced. I don't see an issue with that. I think it gets us to the same point.
I would agree.
And I know that the wetlands, these wetlands flags are located more than 100 feet from the work that we proposed under this order.
Yeah, and that was kind of my memory, that it wasn't right next to where you guys were working. So
Yeah, they're actually closer to that, the second, the alternative location that we looked at that had more wetlands, actually.
Yep.
There.
and is that the last one, Leah?
I don't think so.
Okay.
We have a couple more.
Oh, okay.
So this is the section of conditions about wetland replication work. Under A, so this one has to do with timing. So I had the preparation and planting of replication areas shall be completed in conjunction with or as soon as is practicable following the alteration of wetlands that are being replaced, but in no event later than 30 days after the alteration. Their suggestion is to change it to the preparation and planting of replication areas shall be completed in conjunction with wetland alteration or within 30 days of appropriate weather conditions.
And what is meant by appropriate weather conditions?
So I think this was one of the conditions that originally, we were concerned about compliance with it to the extent that, the weather did not cooperate to allow, us to begin the work within that not later than 30 days that Leah had originally had. So this, gives us a bit more opportunity in case the weather's not cooperative.
So my only problem with wording like this is who makes the determination of appropriate weather conditions? And what does that mean? Too hot, don't want to work. Does it mean a hurricane? I mean, what does appropriate weather conditions mean?
Evening, this is Tom Liddy, professional wetland scientist, Lucas Environmental. So this is more geared towards like time of year. For example, you know, if it's like the dead of winter and it's January, February, and obviously that's not an ideal time to plant new shrubs and trees. And so planting within 30 days, you know, if the ground's frozen or, you know, it's winter, or perhaps it's, you know, mid-July and we're in another drought. It's more timing and time of year, what's appropriate to plant, as opposed to just planting because we have to do that within 30 days of when we grade out the area.
Sandy, I have a suggestion.
Yes.
What if we keep it as the preparation of the area will be to the timeline that we set, but then we say planting shall occur during appropriate planting season? Does that help if we split the two?
Yeah. I think, yeah, because I was gonna kind of go in the same direction, Leah, to say during planting season and appropriate planting conditions or something. Because again, you're not gonna, if you've got a 6-month drought, you don't want to start planting. I don't care what time it is of the year. It just doesn't make sense. So I think, yeah. How do you feel with what Leah said? So it's a kind of similar thing. It's just splitting it up and talking about the planting seasons.
Right, I'm okay with that, Jess, and Jesse.
So I guess my question is, and you know, this is because I'm not a scientist, but could there be cause for too much of like a disjunction between the preparation of the replication area and then the planting if there were weather conditions that were not cooperative that cause kind of, I don't know, like you prepare and then something happens and then you have to prepare again? I guess, and then that might be like a stupid comment, but
No, it's not. I mean, if you prepare the site getting ready for planting and for whatever reason you don't plant, you're going to have to somehow stabilize that soil and so forth. But that's part of construction, kind of. And I don't know if your consultants have that same opinion.
I would agree. Yeah, this is geared more towards, you know, plantings and dressing and stabilization and just giving some flexibility with construction and schedule and planting when it makes sense, like you pointed out, as opposed to, you know, like the clock's ticking, and planting when it's not really appropriate, just to meet a 30-day clock is the intent of this.
Yeah, it's more about having a successful replication area than it is about anything else. And we've had lots and lots of problems with replication areas.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we're trying to do is have success. That's all. That's a lot of lessons learned on this one. So.
okay. Are you able to read that condition, Leah, then as amended, or are we going to go through these one more time at the end?
I'm happy to read it now.
Okay, thanks.
Is that how you want to do it, Sandy, or?
I would say yes.
So what I was gonna do is I was gonna keep the preparation of replication areas shall be completed in conjunction with or as soon as is practicable following the alteration of the wetlands that are being replaced, but in no event later than 30 days after the alteration. And then I was gonna have an additional sentence that planting of the replication areas shall occur during the next appropriate planting season and weather and planting conditions.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
So Leah, instead of making it all A, could it be A and B? Or is it worth keeping them together?
Doesn't matter to me.
I was gonna say, if it's a separate thought, it may be worth putting a separate bullet point or whatever numbering scheme and then pushing everything down. It looks like they're trying to change the rest or a few other ones too. So it may be worth putting it as separate. I don't know, Sandy, if that doesn't make sense.
I think one of the things, and once we get through these, because we have to go to the building inspector, Jessica had previously talked about maybe continuing. I think it would probably be to avoid things. And you can tell us how this is that we get through this, we update it, we check with the building inspector, we send the updated revised before we vote on it, so that you can take a look at it, and then next meeting we can vote on it if that timing works.
That sounds great to the applicant.
Okay, because
Mhm.
I think if we try to do every single thing right now tonight, we'll be here till 1 o'clock, and that is not my idea of a fun night. So
Fair enough.
we're gonna keep moving along. But I think it's important to hit each one to give Leah the kind of direction that she needs, so that she can, do a clean conditions, and then we can share them. And plus we have to get information. So
Great.
sounds good. Next one.
So B is similar. I had once wetland alteration has commenced, no other work is to be commenced on site until establishment of the replication area is completed. So going off of our conversation just now, I'm thinking it should be changed to once wetland alteration has commenced, no other work is to be commenced on site until preparation of the replication area has been completed. Just prep of the spot.
Right.
To ensure that it's starting to be created, but not full establishment.
Right. I think that's, yeah. I think that's that's in line with the first one. And it gives kind of that flexibility. It holds what we want to do is just, you can't come in and play around in the wetlands and leave. We want it to get to a certain point. But this one, what this would change is that if it's not right to plant at that time for a variety of reasons, you don't have to plant it and so forth and complete it at that point. You just need to make sure that that prep work is done. I don't know if you have any comments on that.
I think that sounds okay to me. I'll defer to Tom. I think we were a little just confused originally about like what the term established meant.
Whether it was the 2 seasons or not yet. So I think we can clarify that.
Yeah, that was more of, does it have to be graded, topsoil added and planted and seeded and stabilized and with vegetative growth, or before we can do anything else, or just prepped like you said? But I think that's the
condition- change.
Yes, so that sounds good to me.
Okay,
Next one.
go for it.
So this was just erosion control, will be installed between the existing wetland and replication area. And then no work, disturbance or clearing is permitted within the adjacent existing wetland. They're just proposing that we add, except what is shown on the approved plans. I'm totally fine with that.
Yeah, and that's just your minor grading and other things that are just realistic. Okay. All right, next one.
Any work occurring within wetland resource areas shall occur during dry conditions. They're proposing taking that out.
So, yeah, I know this is a pretty typical one. And obviously, a lot of this comes from like the culvert work that you're trying to do. You don't really want to do it when it's really wet. I don't know, Leah, if you have any takes on this one.
I mean, I'm hesitant to fully take it out and not do some sort of compromise instead, because we don't really want to see them out there in torrential rain. Not that anyone wants to be out there then, but just we're trying to avoid worst case scenario here.
And strange things happen at the end of projects. I don't know if the applicant has any suggestions as far as a revision to it to give you more flexibility as opposed to just striking this altogether. My concern is end of project time, and people do really dumb things if they have a deadline.
Right, so we just didn't really understand what dry conditions meant. Is it like bone dry, like July, August only, or what does dry mean? I mean, is it during rainfalls or time of year? We shouldn't know what dry meant.
Right.
And just having, say you start work, it's dry, and then it rains a week later, it's not like you can just stop work or and just wait. So I'm trying to think of different ways. I think maybe, I don't know if there's like if say we are working during a wetter time of year, if there's more detail on like the watering methods that would be used at the crossing location that could be provided to the commission or their agent at that time, or
Is this intended to be like a low flow thing? Like if you're going to do like a culvert or something where you had water that was flowing? I think that's what you were getting at. But I think in our case, we have that stone culvert and it's dry really. Most it doesn't flow unless you get a significant rainfall, right? And I think that's what Tom was trying to say is like, is dry conditions a time of the year you don't want us to work? Or is it any time that there's rain or it's wet?
So
And
this is
I would say in our case, both of those aren't significant impediments on this particular project because the crossing there it's not wet all times of the year, I guess is my point there.
so. I mean, this has come up on other projects, and Leo, you can chime in too. But some of the things is like we're not telling you you can't do it in the spring, because if we have a drought in the spring, or you don't have rain for a week, and you forecast for no rain in 2 weeks, and it's dry, well, you can do your work. So we got away from like saying you can only do it in July and August, because I think that's too restrictive based on climate change and the change in weather patterns. I don't think we can be as reliant on historical weather patterns as we have been in the past. So this is an attempt to try to be a little bit more flexible, but just I don't know, Leah, if you've got something
No,
else to add to that.
You're right as to why it's worded this way now, but I can also see how that kind of leaves it too open.
Right. Yeah. So the whole idea is like that crossing, right? I mean, you don't start work and it's a 4-day job and there's 3 inches of rain, predicted for the end of the week. I mean, that's a recipe for, disaster. So it's really about saying that, when you're scheduling and so forth, you have to take weather into account, and that it's an appropriate appropriate condition to do the work where you're not going to cause problems, or you trying to, nowadays with predictions of weather, it's a lot more accurate and it's a lot longer further out there. I mean, when you are talking about the culvert crossing, you're not looking at a month's worth of work. I mean, that's a few days. It's just not that big of a deal. We just want to make sure you do it. And when we say dry conditions, maybe instead of dry conditions, it should be saying, I don't know. I'm trying to think of a different word.
Do you feel like
Sandy, could
Yes.
I add one thing? Instead of saying shall occur during dry conditions, with what you just pointed out, that you can predict, we have better prediction of the weather now.
Yep.
Can we simply say shall be planned to occur during dry conditions, or shall be planned, like to what you just said? If there's a hurricane coming, you're not going to be like, I'm going to go start doing this work that's going to land during the middle of this hurricane. That would allow for that type of it's
Right.
a check. But again, it's unless we're going to go full and define dry conditions. I mean, it sounds like either Tom or Jesse just mentioned that the thing was relatively dry unless you get a significant rainfall. So it
Right.
sounds like we know what dry is, it's relatively dry. So I just feel like adding a word about being planned during dry conditions, or the wording of it itself seems pretty straightforward, even though dry is not perfectly defined.
Yeah,
I think there's an understanding of what that intent is. So if we need
Right.
to add a sentence to it.
or
I mean,
just add in parentheses after is, no precipitation. I mean, that's,
Shall
that's what
occur
it's
during no, dry conditions or no plant or no
forecasted.
no forecasted precipitation. Yeah.
Yeah. There's something like that. I mean, it's, I understand why it's in here because we've had problems. Any good contractor is not going to do this work when there's a big rainstorm coming. I understand that. Unfortunately, there's a wide variety of people doing work out there, and unfortunately, we have to put in these type of conditions. Good contractors gonna avoid this if they're doing a culvert crossing. So I don't want to get totally caught up in this, but I also want to make sure that the applicant understands, kind of what our intent is here. And if it takes a little bit, to Jonathan's point, of simply adding to be planned during dry conditions slash, um, a no to low precipitation. How does something like that sound? From the applicant side?
Um,
Instead of dry, could we use the term like, could we use low flow conditions, like, or, because you don't want us working there when there's basically any kind of a significant rainfall or there's flow in there, right? Is that?
Correct. We don't want you to go in and all of a sudden have excessive erosion and you can't catch up to it. And, you've seen it in those type of things. So we're trying to say that, you need to plan this out. I think Jonathan's word of planning it out to do it at the best time is what the intent of this is.
Right, I'm just spitballing here. Maybe shall occur during appropriate weather conditions such as low flow conditions, or during periods of where there is not expected to be significant weather events or something.
Okay. So let us give an
You can
opportunity
think about
for,
that. We can,
yeah, let us give an opportunity for Leah to come up with, I think, Leah, you understand where we're going with this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My first, hearing everything that was just said, my first thought would be any work occurring within wetland resource areas shall be planned to occur during low flow conditions.
Okay. And everyone knows how you can predict low flow conditions. And it's not specifically seasonally driven any longer. Okay. Next one.
That's it.
That's it. So as I just said, I think we've had a good discussion. I don't think we're changing the intent of what these conditions are for. I think we're really just trying to be a little bit more definitive and give a little bit more guidance. And I think if the applicant is amenable to this, is to request just a continuation to the next meeting so that we can send out an updated conditions list with the changes as we discussed, just to, just as a way to, so that we can close it out the next time, because what's really holding us up is having discussion with the building commissioner. So Jonathan, anything else to add?
Do we need to open it up to a public because it is a public hearing?
Yes, we do. Yep. Thank you. Patrick, anything else?
Nothing else at this time.
Okay. Yeah, and so as we continue to talk more about the continuance, if there is anyone on the meeting who has stuck it out and listened to us going back and forth over these detailed conditions, just to let you know, this is our way as a commission to make sure that things are done in the appropriate way. We appreciate an applicant and their consultants who are just looking to do it the right way, to have these type of conversations, because what we're trying to do is get it to work. This isn't, I don't see this as anything other than, trying to do the right thing and getting it to the point where everyone can make it work. And so that we have less problems in the future. So I appreciate that, as opposed to, I don't take offense with someone saying, hey, we can't do this. They're constructing it and we're just issuing a permit. So we're trying to come to a common consensus. And having said all of that, I said that because, and still talking to see if anyone in the audience or anyone on the call, if you have any questions about what we were just talking about, we'll go through the next steps. And if you don't see anything, Jan, let me know. And if there's nothing there, we will go back to the applicant about them requesting a continuance to the next meeting.
There's no hands raised from the public.
All right, thank you. For the applicant.
Great, Jess Barty again. Thank you, Chair Brock and the commissioners and Leah and Jan. I think this has been a really great discussion and we really appreciate the commission members' time tonight. And so with that, I will request a continuance to the Concom's next public hearing.
We have June 6th is our next one.
That should work for me. Jesse and Tom. June
I was just gonna say, you probably don't need us as long, if they're gonna send around it ahead of time and everything's A-okay, we probably could just let you know, Jessica, only in the event of something being, crazy. But from what Leah said, and everybody agreed on, I don't see that as being the case. So I think that myself and Tom could look at any draft and reply to you, and you could take care of it. That works for you.
Great, that sounds fair to me.
I
Is it
agree.
okay, Tom?
Yes, I agree, and thank you all for hearing us out tonight.
And Leah, you got no problem with being able to get this out, and it's the 16th, getting it out the next couple of weeks so that they
Yeah.
have a week to review, and
That's
then
fine.
we're all set for the next one. Okay. All right.
All-
Based on that, oh, go ahead, Jessica, please.
Oh, no, sorry. I was just going to request the continuance then to June 6th, please.
Okay. And then I would just all we need then, and we haven't seen anything from the public. So what we need now is just a continuance to June 6th, and then we'll have the voting members vote on that. And our other commissioners can just recuse themselves or abstain. So do I have a motion to continue this hearing to June 6th?
So motioned.
Second,
Second,
roll call vote. Jonathan,
Yes.
Patrick,
yes.
I am also a yes. And I will just let the other two commissioners give their opinion if they want to abstain. Emily
I'll abstain.
and Travis.
I'll abstain.
Thank you very much. So the motion carries. We'll see you at the next hearing. Yep, I'll get it out. And then, I think we may have a side discussion as far as, being able to set up a little bit more conversation on some of the conditions for some of the larger projects. Usually we're pretty straightforward. So thank you very much.
Thank you all very much. Have a good night.
You
Thank
too.
you.
Thank you.
All right, Leah. So that's it for public hearings. We're up on the action items. The only thing is we need to go back on the discussion items, which we were in the middle of. Like to apologize that we had other business that was actually time certain, so that's why we switched off to them. So
That's quite all right.
sorry about having you stick around, but
No problem.
I knew that our conversation would probably take a little bit longer than to have two groups actually waiting around, so.
Yep.
All right, so where we left off was kind of a general discussion about some of the processes as far as trying to, shift where the replication area is, because for a number of reasons, the replication areas either didn't take or weren't constructed to phase two. And then the other discussion part of it was how we would link the phase one replication to phase one and so forth, so that that we're not going to wait till the end of phase two to make sure they're done, so that we don't run into the same problem. So Byron, I don't know if you have some of the comments based on our conversation.
Right, yeah, so I guess, in the context, I understand the commission's position of not wanting to kind of kick the can down the road. I would say that we actually have begun the as-built of phase two, so everything will proceed pretty quickly. But I was wondering if it, as I think someone brought up the question earlier, if it might be possible to post a bond so that we could have the roadway of phase one accepted while we're working on the replication areas.
So I will go around to the commissioners and get their opinion. Jonathan?
The question's being to post the bond, if I have a question on that, or
Yeah, is the
acceptable.
is that acceptable to have a bond posted so that they can release phase one?
I think to your point earlier, I believe that I think someone said it earlier. I don't know if it was Leah or you, Sandy, is that's a cost for the town too, if they have to, or it's a task for the town
It's a
to
task. Yep.
pull. If the bond has to be pulled, then they have to go find or the bonding agency's finding somebody, and it's.
Yep.
So as a last resort, potentially, yes, but I think I don't know if there's any other path to success here, because again, I wouldn't want to create a headache for Leah and or the town down the road.
Yeah, and we have activated. Planning board's a little bit more familiar with doing that. It is, to your point, once the bond is activated, it's a matter of who the responsibility, if it's a bonding company, to go and to complete that work. And there's a whole process. So it can happen, and it does happen. It is, a little bit more work on staff. So yeah, it does give us the assurance that something will get done because the money's there. So that's a positive part of it.
And who would pull the bond?
So basically, typically a bond is pulled when it is when the contractor just leaves, meaning they stop
No,
work or whatever.
I understand that. I'm just saying, who would pay for the bond? Because again, working
Oh,
construction.
the applicant. Yeah, the applicant does.
Would have to. Okay, so the applicant would pull the bond. So again, it's mutually understood that, or it's in their best interest to not have that bond pulled, because then they probably won't
Correct.
get bonded.
Right.
I mean,
And
or they
there's
might not be able to afford the bond.
right. Yeah. There's two. This you can do a cash bond and you put everything up, or you actually get a bond and you pay the percentage and so forth. So, yep, standard. Yeah, standard type of stuff on that. Patrick, any kind of comments or questions on that?
I guess some of the same thoughts or same thoughts there. What timeline does that open
So
up to?
so look as the bond as insurance, right? So it is still, you still tie the, replication being completed by the end of phase two, but the bond ensures that they can't just not do it. As opposed, it's a way to, so our way of leveraging things is to tie it to, acceptance of the roadways of phase one. And if that doesn't happen, or if the applicant is asking for something else, the other way to do it is post a bond And therefore, even if they don't complete it at the end of phase two, the town has the money to do it. There's a process to get that work done, and we don't have to worry about that. So it's an insurance kind of policy.
Yeah, I
So,
guess that was kind of what I was wondering, is if it was tied to the end of phase two in this case then.
yeah, so typically, and Leah, tell me if I'm wrong, that you would only post a bond if you weren't tying it to phase one. So it's our assurance that if something happens with this contractor, the money is there to do that work.
Yeah. So I guess having known that this should have been completed in the past, is this something that could now take another 10 years to get done?
No, because it will be tied to phase two no matter what. Hopefully the only time you invoke that bond is if they leave, if they cease doing whatever they're doing. Because like the planning board has bonds against the road, right? So if they leave, then the planning board would finish the roadway. So what we're doing is saying we want a bond to make sure that the bioretention gets done, because right now we don't have a bond for that. As Leah mentioned, there was something stated about it, but it's not there. This would put money there so that if they did close out phase one, and then they continue with phase two, but for whatever reason disappear in the middle of the night, we have an insurance that'll get done. That's what the bond is paying. That's what they're paying for with the bond.
Right. Right.
So
Even, I might be speaking out of turn, but even with the bond, will it still be tied to certain plots of land for where it's going? So that
yeah,
that's-
a good question. It would be tied to the new plans for those new replication areas. So anything to do with the replication required for this project would be tied to that bond. This bond would be just for the replication work. So that's a really good question. So that's it. Yeah, that's in our purview. That's our jurisdiction. So.
And is that known at this point, or are we deciding what to do, not necessarily knowing where the replication will go?
Correct. I mean, they'll have to do a new plan. They'll have to submit that to us, so that a permit can get issued for it. And the bond would be based on those plans. Basically, an estimate would be created. We would have the peer reviewer check that estimate, and that's what the bond is based on.
So sorry if these are dumb questions, but are we deciding things tonight, or are we waiting for the more information to decide things?
So good questions. We're trying to give the applicant some direction. We
Okay.
do know that we need something that shows where the replication areas are going to go, the design of it, and how it ties into phase one, because they would like to close it out. So we don't have any plans in front of us. What the applicant is asking tonight as an informal process is one, which was the discussion that we had, if those replication areas aren't in the areas where they originally proposed but go to phase two. That's why I asked, can we look at the plan? Because to me, you want to make sure that those areas that are chosen are still within the same wetland system. And for this site, it looks like that's what would happen. It's best to do it, close to where you do the filling, but you can, it's also okay to do it within the wetland system as long as wherever you're doing it is successful. So I don't know if that answers your questions.
That does, thank you.
Okay. Do you have any other questions, Emily? Because this is definitely something not usual. So,
I think that's it for now.
okay. Travis, any questions?
Nope.
Okay. Do you have any opinion on the bond, or?
Oh, this is the one I'm recusing myself on.
Oh,
since
I'm
the
sorry.
butter.
Thank you.
That's
Thank you
right.
for reminding me, and
I
that's my
always have
fault.
opinions, but not this
Yes,
time.
no, I appreciate you reminding me of the fact that you recused yourself. I'm sorry. yeah, I'm sure you have opinions, but you don't need to express them at this point. So, so Leah, so as far as to kind of keep this moving, next steps are, if we generally say to the applicant, we understand that the phase one replication areas either were done and did not take. And basically, if you now begin to investigate, alternate locations of that replication area, and then that has to get submitted. Is there anything specific we should be saying at this point?
What I'm hearing is that you guys are open to the locations moving, but that you would be considering things like bonding and peer review oversight going
Correct.
forward.
Yes,
That's
yeah.
my summary.
Yeah, and that's pretty much where I'm at. So,
Is that clarifying enough for Byron?
Yeah, I think it is. I guess the next step is, obviously, we're going to suggest, we're going to prepare a plan showing proposed areas and a new NOI. Regarding the bonding, what should our next step be? Should we discuss that at the next meeting, or should we forward some documentation to discuss, or how should we work that?
great question. I think it would be, and Leah, tell me if this sounds all right, is I think that maybe something a little bit more formal than just a discussion, which is a request and maybe an outline of what you're intending to do and request it in a letter so that
So
we can move to, go ahead.
So the way that our standard process for a bond, just like we talked about with Follett this evening,
Yeah.
is that the public hearing process is over, you get the order lays out in one of the conditions, the
Yeah.
items we want bonded. And then prior to commencement of work, you get us an estimate of that bond. It goes to our peer reviewer. Once that's okayed, and this is taken care of at the staff level. If our peer
Yeah.
reviewer says, yeah, that's an amount that covers everything, it's adequate, then you get the bond, bring it to the office, and we get it to the treasurer collector. So it's kind of like behind the scenes after the public hearing process. I don't think you
Okay.
need to come to the next meeting. It wouldn't be an upfront thing, it would be after.
Okay. All right, so basically we'd prepare the new NOI and plans, and the bonding would be handled through that process.
Yep, but it would be a prior to commencement of work condition.
Right.
That we would figure that out and get it in place.
Okay.
Yeah. And Leah, one other thing is just to see if, I know that we've done this a little bit on other projects, not kind of at this stage, is to have the applicant even maybe review some of the areas of where the replication going with art, just so that we can all be on the same page and have it successful.
So once we get the NOI. have it
Okay.
Go to Ecotech peer review.
Yep. Just so
Yeah.
that we can make sure that we're all on the same page so that we can
Okay.
make these areas work.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. All right. Sounds good. You have
Okay,
your
thank you very much.
kind of work to do. So, all right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. You're welcome.
All right, Leah. Anything else? I think we covered everything, right?
That's it.
Absolutely fabulous. So, Emily, how have you liked the first few meetings?
That was a lot today.
You've attended 2 pretty unusual meetings, I have to say.
Yes.
Hopefully I'm not starting a trend of them all being unusual.
Unusual usually means longer meetings. So I would like to trend a little bit the other way. So
If I am the catalyst, feel free to kick me out.
no, don't worry. That's not going to happen. So other than that, unless anyone else has anything else to add or ask, looking for one more motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
Oh, we got a motion and a second. Roll call vote. Jonathan,
Yes.
Patrick,
Yes.
Emily,
Yes.
Travis.
Yes.
I'm a yes. It passes unanimously. Leah, what's your vote?
Yes,
Okay,
definitely.
Jan.
Very yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Have a good one, everyone.